Hi, my name is Mike Meliti. I'm the Division Manager for WineGuardian. This video, we're going to look at the remote interface controller and how it is set up in our factory with each WineGuardian system. Some of the basic functions of the remote interface controller, how to set temperature, how to set humidity, go through all of the settings, functions, and alarm functions to get a clear understanding of how to operate this device. The remote interface controller ships with every ducted cooling unit that we manufacture, and also every ducted split cooling unit that we manufacture. It is an option on our through-the-wall systems, and it is an option on our ductless split systems. So this device is what you will receive if you order a ducted unit or a ducted split system. We've talked in some of our other videos about how this connects to the unit. After I go through all of the setup menus and all of the details on how to set temperature and humidity, we'll look at the back of the device and on how you connect the control wiring. Okay. So on the face of this controller, you see 3 buttons with 4 functions to the controller. There's an up arrow button, there's a down arrow button. The left side of this lower button is the on-off switch, and the right-hand side of this button is the settings button, which allows you to get into the setup functions of the unit. Okay, so you see the control panel face here and a variety of things illustrated. You see an exclamation point, which means that there's an error code, and we'll get into that later as we go through this video. You see the number 75 flashing and the degrees Fahrenheit. That's actually the temperature in this space. So both the temperature and humidity are being sensed by this device. There's a thermostat and a humidistat in this controller which are taking readings. So right now in this room it's 75 degrees and 47% relative humidity. At the bottom of the screen you see a little snowflake. That means that there has been a call for cooling, and the compressor is on and the WineGuardian unit is cooling the wine room. You see degrees Fahrenheit up in the left hand corner, and you see relative humidity in the upper right hand corner. So how do we change temperature? Simply hit the up arrow key, and then you see 55 is flashing. That's a set point of the wine cellar that this device has come from the factory. So we'll do it again. 55 degrees, so we can continue to hit the up arrow. We'll change that to 60 degrees. Once we change that temperature, we can allow the device to go back to its normal state, and that temperature will have automatically been programmed into the device. So if I hit the up arrow again, you see that the current set point now is 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would be the controlling point of the wine cellar. Okay, so let's do that again, and let's lower it back down to 55 degrees. And then we can let that sit and go back to its normal display screen, and that setting will have been programmed into the device. Okay. So how do we change relative humidity? Hit the up arrow again, and then we hit the right hand portion of the controller button, the settings button, and then that now displays relative humidity and 55% RH. did that too slow. I'll repeat that because it switched back to the main screen. Now, by adjusting the up arrow key, I can adjust that relative humidity to 65% RH. So the key with changing temperature and humidity is to recognize that when you're changing relative humidity, it will say %RH in the right-hand corner. If you're changing temperature, it will show degrees Fahrenheit on the screen as the setting you're changing. It's important to know that you can only change relative humidity if you have the controller set up so that it has a humidifier connected to the device. And I'll show you that area when we get into the setup screen. And it's setting number 6, which you have to change. Again, I'll show you that once we get into the setup screen. But it will only allow you to change relative humidity if you've changed setting 6 to 1, which recognizes that there's a humidifier connected to the device. Okay. Right now you can see there's a snowflake showing. It's in cooling mode. We actually have this connected to a Wingardium unit, and you can change the mode of operation of the unit from cooling or automatic or heating. And I'll show you how to enter that screen. So we're at the main display screen. We're going to hit the gears button again. And at the bottom of the screen, you see that it shows that we're in the gears function or the setup function, and the snowflake is blinking. If I hit that button again, it will show a flame, which is heating mode. So if you kept it at this, it would only be in heating mode. If I hit it again, I'm now switched to heating and cooling, which is an auto mode. And then if I hit it again, it goes back to the flashing snowflake. So this is cooling only, this is heating only, and then this is auto. So it will automatically go between heating and cooling of the device. Now, when you're setting to the auto mode, you have to recognize if the unit has a heating coil or not. If it was not ordered with a heating coil, it will not heat. So that's important to know. So you're either cooling, or if you have a heating coil, it will go back and forth between heating and cooling if the heating is required. So let's get into the setup function of the controller. In order to enter that function, you'll need to press and hold down the gears or setup function side of this lower button. And we'll do that and hold it for about 5 seconds. So now we're into that setup function. You'll recognize when you do so that it shows a 1 and an F. The number 1 setting allows the user to modify how this thermostat is showing temperature in the controls. So you can go between degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. So I hit the down arrow, it went to degrees Celsius, hit the arrow back up, and it goes to degrees Fahrenheit. So if we were to change that, and let's do that, let's change it to degrees Celsius and wait for the device to go back to its normal screen, you'll see that the temperature now is displayed in degrees Celsius. So you see now it's showing degrees Celsius. You see the symbol up above that temperature, 24 degrees Celsius. Relative humidity stays at 46%. And right now we're getting a flashing symbol for a snowflake, which means there's a call for cooling at the device. So let's go back into the setup function. And we'll change that back to F for Fahrenheit. We're going to hit that setup function button again, or what we'll call the mode button, and it takes us to setting 2, which is set at 50. This is the low temperature alarm set point. So if your wine cellar were to get to 50 degrees, you would see the exclamation point, and you would know that the wine cellar's gotten too cold, and it set off an alarm. This is adjustable. You can adjust this to whatever you feel is required for your space. So we'll keep that at 50 degrees. By hitting the up and down arrows, you can adjust this setting. We'll hit the mode button again. It takes us to setting number 3. Setting number 3 is the high temperature alarm set point. You can see we've got it set now to 64 degrees. So that means if your wine cellar gets to a temperature of 64 degrees, an alarm will show on the screen an exclamation point saying that your wine cellar has reached the alarm condition of being too warm. Again, this is adjustable. You can make that temperature whatever you wish by hitting the up and down arrows. We'll hit the mode button again. It takes us to setting number 4. See this change from Fahrenheit to %RH. This is the low relative humidity alarm set point. Again, you can adjust this value to whatever you see fit by hitting the up and down arrows. And again, this will alarm you that the relative humidity in the wine cellar has gotten too low. We hit the mode button again. This is the high relative humidity alarm set point, 95% RH. If it gets to that point within your wine cellar, the alarm will go off. You'll see the exclamation point, and you'll know that something is wrong within your wine cellar as far as relative humidity. Setting number 6. This gets into the add or remove humidifier set point. You see that it's now blinking number 1. I have it number 1 saying that there is a humidifier connected to the unit. 1 means there's a humidifier. 0 means there is no humidifier connected to the WineGuardian unit. 2 means that there is a standalone humidifier mounted to the system, and that it will control that device. So, in order to set your relative humidity, as I mentioned before, you need to have this setting at 1 or 2. We'll hit the mode button again, or the settings gears button. It takes us to setting number 7. And setting 7 is the fan auto or fan on set point. So the controls come from the factory at 0, which means the recirculating fan only turns on when there's a call for cooling. You can adjust this to 1, which means that the fan will run continuously. It means the fan will recirculate air throughout the wine cellar all of the time, regardless of whether it's cooling or not. Again, it comes from the factory set at 0, which means it only comes on or only turns on when there's a call for cooling. We'll go to setting 8. Setting 8 is basically a gateway to the advanced setup screen of the controls. So you see it flashing at 0. In order to go to the next setting, you have to hit the up arrow until this reaches, until it reads 12. So 8 and then 12. And then by hitting this mode button again, it allows you to go to setting number 9. If for some reason you don't have the code, you can contact our factory and we'll give you that. I can tell you it's always number 12. Number 12 allows you to get past number 8 and into the advanced settings of the controllers. Setting number 9 is the compressor anti-short cycling time. So this is set in number of minutes. And what this does is this is the time frame in which the controls will not allow the compressor to turn on. So it waits 5 minutes before the compressor will turn on before there's a call for cooling. As you can see, we jump back to the main screen. We'll go through the settings again, the setup function again to get us back to number 9. So you can see it's set to 5, and that's a 5-minute time delay. And this is adjustable anywhere from 0, which we wouldn't recommend, all the way up to 10 minutes. Rapid on and off of the compressor can impact its performance over the life of the unit. So if it turns on and off very rapidly, you can destroy a compressor very quickly. So we have a factory setting of 5 minutes. So we suggest you leave it there, and the unit will run properly. So we'll move on to setting number 10. Setting number 10 has to do with the remote sensors and where the sensing device is inside the wine cellar. Right now you can see it's set to R1, which indicates a remote interface. So this device in itself, R1 is doing the sensing. This controller would have to be inside the wine cellar to perform the task of reading temperature and humidity and controlling the WineGuardian unit. If we hit the up arrow, you can see it looks like an R5. That's actually a remote sensor. So that tells me that there's a remote sensor, something other than this device, one of our remote sensors located inside the wine cellar that is reading temperature and humidity and controlling the unit. So I'm going to hit the down arrow. That shows me the R1 again, remote interface controller. And then I see L1. L1 is local interface. The local interface is essentially the controls at our through-the-wall units. If you have this device connected to a ducted unit, ducted split system, you would not set this to L1. It will either be R1 or a remote sensor. So hit the down arrow. The next setting would be A. A is averaging. If you had more than one remote sensor inside the wine room, the A will allow you to average their readings. So in order to do that, you have to have the setting number 10 set to A. So we'll move this back to R1, which means a remote interface controller mounted inside the wine room, and we'll carry on with our instructions. Hit the mode button again. It takes me to setting 11. Setting 11 is the enable or disable of the defrost sensor input. The defrost sensor input is part of our serving temperature option, and there's a sensor located at the cooling coil of the unit, and this is where that sensor is configured. 0 means that there is no sensor attached to the unit. 1 means that there is a sensor. So this particular unit has a defrost sensor and a serving temperature option with the unit. Setting number 12 is also part of that that option. Setting 12 is the set point of the temperature in which that sensor will not turn on the compressor. So at 36 degrees, if that sensor at the cooling coil is reading 36 degrees or lower, it will force the compressor to turn off and not turn back on. So if we hit the mode button again, we're going to advance to setting 13. This is the temperature at that same sensor, which will allow the compressor to turn back on. So essentially, the controls are looking for a temperature of 39 degrees or higher, and this is adjustable by hitting the up and down buttons to ensure that the coil is not freezing. Once the temperature goes above 40 degrees, it will allow the compressor to turn back on. We'll hit the mode button again. It takes us to setting 14, and this is the run time for that, again, that same serving temperature option on the compressor. So it will allow the compressor to run for 1 hour, and this is adjustable, before it takes action again. So we'll hit the mode button again. This takes us to setting 15. This is the room sensor calibration. So our device allows you to calibrate the sensor that's in this device. Say for instance you had another device in your wine cellar that may be reading 2 degrees warmer or colder than our thermostat. You can make these two devices read the same by adjusting setting 15, and you can adjust it to +5 or a -5 temperature calibration. Okay, so if your independent device is 5 degrees colder than what our unit is showing or what our thermostat is showing, you can adjust it down to -5 so both devices match. We'll bring this back up to 0. Hit the mode button again. This is the sensor calibration for relative humidity. So we can calibrate the humidistat that's in the controls. Again, it works the same way. You can adjust upwards or downwards to calibrate the relative humidity, and it's a +10 or -10 variable. So you can adjust this to match an independent device that you have in the space. So bring that back down to 0. And then we'll hit the mode button again. Takes us to setting 17. Setting 17 is the differential temperature adjustment. And essentially this setting is the temperature at which the compressor will turn on above your set point. So I've got this set to 3. If the temperature, and the maximum is 3, if the temperature goes from 55, say our set point is 55 degrees, to 58 degrees, once it reaches that temperature or above, it will force the compressor to turn on. So if I change that to 1, and my set point is 55 degrees, the compressor will turn on at 56 degrees. So you can adjust this variable at setting 17 to tell the system when to turn on the compressor, from 1 degrees to a maximum of 3 degrees from set point. On the low side, it will always turn off 1 degree below the set point that you have in this device. So if we have a set point of 55 degrees, the compressor will turn off at 54 degrees. But you can adjust the high side of when it turns on. So setting 18 is the deadband setting. This is the minimal allowable temperature difference between heating and cooling set points. So if we have a cooling set point of 55 degrees, the minimum that we can set the heating set point to would be 53 degrees, and this is adjustable to a maximum of 5 and a minimum of 1. So that means that the heating can come on at 1 degree below set point to a maximum of 5 degrees of set point. So in this particular case, if we set that to 5, the heating would only come on at 50 degrees, assuming that the set point was 55 degrees. So we'll hit the setup button. So we'll hit the setup button again and go to setting number 19. This is the test mode setting. 0 is off, 1 is on. This setting is really something that shouldn't be configured in the field, something that's done in our factory. And then setting number 2 is set up in our factory also. This is specific to the WineGuardian product and should not be adjusted in the field. So if I let this go back to its normal display state, so right now you can see that 79 degrees in this room, 37% relative humidity. We have an exclamation point which shows that there is an alarm situation. The temperature is blinking, so that means that it's off on high temperature alarm. We went through the configuration sheet, so there's a high temperature alarm, there's a low temperature alarm, there's a high humidity alarm, low humidity alarm, and there's also an open alarm. There's also 2 other alarms that will show up in the display screen. If you see a exclamation point with a 1 next to it, that means that the high pressure switch fault is opened. So there's a high pressure safety switch as part of the refrigeration system, and that has opened or tripped. So that would mean that the temperature at the condensing unit has either gotten too high, or there's a restriction in the ductwork someplace which would cause the refrigerant to get too high of a pressure. So that is something that a technician would need to reset and bring back down to working order. You might also see an exclamation point with a 2 next to it. That's a condensate switch fault. So if you have the unit connected to a float switch in an auxiliary condensate pan, that will trigger that alarm and cause the unit to shut off. So if you see that alarm code, an exclamation point with 2, that means that the condensate switch has tripped and you have excessive water in the drain pan. As far as connecting the unit, the remote interface controller to the WineGuardian, you see that our control cable is connected to the back of this device. Very easy pull, click and pull, release connection. The other side of this cord is connected to either COM port 1 or COM port 2 at the wine cellar cooling unit. You see a foam pad located at the back of this device. It's important that that be present prior to installation. It acts as a seal between any other conditions, either outside or inside of the wine cellar. So it's important to have that seal in place prior to installation. So that's how our controllers work. That's how you configure them and go through some of the setup screens and understand what the alarms mean.